Over the last, year or so, I have been doing a class on the Haftarot, the prophetic readings that come after the Torah reading. And I did this for a whole bunch of reasons, but basically I decided that I needed to learn more about it. And I find, and some of you know this, that when you teach, you learn more than the students, than you're actually teaching. That's the nature of teaching. So I've learned and enjoyed and continue to learn a great deal about the Haftarot. And I want to share a little bit of that in connection with this week's Haftorah. Now, first of all, this week's Shabbat Shuvah, takes its name from the initial word of the Haftorah, which is Shuvah, to return, okay? And that's not unusual. We do that with the Torah readings as too. The whole history of how it came to be that after the Torah reading, you had readings from the prophets is a long and interesting story, which I don't have time to tell you. But I can tell you that we believe that originally when they started doing this, they didn't do it every Shabbat. They only did it on certain Shabbatot that they wanted to indicate had a special nature, okay? And this was one of those Shabbatot, the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So this is a very ancient custom. This is one of the grandpappies of Haftarot. That's number one. Number two, does anybody know what the word Haftorah means? Anybody got an idea? I'll give you a hint. It's like the word maftir. Anybody? Okay. Now, okay. For those of you who know Yiddish or remember a little Yiddish, when you want to get rid of somebody, you say, "Ich will potter werden von ihm." I want to get rid of him. Patur. Patur means to finish, to come at the end. So while the word Haftorah sounds like Torah, T-O-R-A, that Torah, doesn't come from the word Torah. It comes from the word patur, to finish up, to conclude, to kind of be like, the dessert, so to speak. So the Haftorah is not Torah, but a way of finishing up, of tying things together, put it that way. Now, sometimes these Haftarot are made up of stories or taken from the parts of the second part of what's called the Tanakh. That's the word we use instead of the word that Christians use for the Torah. We use the word Tanakh. And some of it are stories, right? So when we read about in the Torah and the book of Bamidbar about the law of the Nazir, a certain kind of oath that a person takes where you don't drink wine and you don't cut your hair. Lo and behold, what's the Haftorah for that day? Somebody take a wild guess. What? Did somebody say it's the story of Samson? Right. You're absolutely right. Okay. So some of those are stories that somehow fit. But the majority of the Haftorah readings come from the later prophets, from the Nevi'im, what we call the Nevi'im Achronim, Isaiah, Jeremiah, on and on like this. And most of those Haftarot point to the future, okay? They direct us to the time that's yet to come. Let me explain. In the year 70, the Second Jewish Commonwealth was destroyed by the Romans. The third, anybody know when the Third Jewish Commonwealth was established? 1948. So for the better part of 2,000 years, we have been waiting for the return of the Jewish Commonwealth, for the third Jewish state. And how did we keep this alive, this dream? Well, one of the ways we kept it alive is through the Haftarot. Because the Haftarot, the majority of them, point in that direction. So that meant that if you were in shul every Shabbat, and lots of folks went to shul in those days, they would be reminded that the dream still existed, that there was a time to come. Some spoke about the Haftarah as pointing in the direction of the Mashiach. So the Haftarot was a kind, if you don't mind me saying, a kind of singing Hatikvah, right? A way of generating hope that we would come to a time, which we have come to, by the way, where people speak Hebrew and on and on and on. We produce our own money, we protect ourselves, and all the things that go with being the third, what I call the third Jewish Commonwealth. So that's how it all got there. And little by little, as I say, different communities picked out different haftarot. They weren't all the same. But due to the rise of the printing press, they got formalized. So we have a schedule that is, if you don't mind me saying so, I think is unnecessarily rigid, but we won't go into that whole thing right now. So this is the origin. Now, after I learned all this and shared it, I went on to ask myself, how do you read a Haftorah, right? Now, when I ask you how do you read a Haftorah, you're going to say, well, you get up here and you chant it, okay? Now, that's true. That's absolutely correct. But that was done for an interesting reason. It was largely due as a way of memorizing and keeping alive the words, because music was used as a memory device. Now, if you then listen, you hear the melody. But that's not the only level of reading, right? And that's the level that I began to develop in this course and in myself. I did something called voice mapping. I took a Haftorah, looked at it, and said, how many voices do I hear here? Okay? And lo and behold, like this week's Haftorah, let me take out my notes here, because I'm not good at numbers. Here we go. Rabbi Moss read from the 14th chapter of Hosea, right? Now, who was Hosea? Just for the record, Hosea lived approximately in the year 750 before the Common Era. That was a long time ago, all right? Some of you know Hosea if you put your tefillin on every day and you recite those words where you put it around the finger, they come directly from Hosea. If you look at the translation, you'll see that's a marriage vow when you put it on your finger, right? Because Hosea came with this wonderful metaphor that the relationship between God and the people of Israel was the marital relationship. Unfortunately, Hosea pointed out that, as sometimes happens in destabilized marriages, there's a lack of fidelity in the marriage. And so when Hosea talked about the people of Israel turning away from God, he used the metaphor of infidelity in marriage, a very powerful metaphor. And that's the other skill that I had to develop, to pay attention to the metaphors and the hyperbole in there. But to go back to map reading, if you take the piece that was read today, Hosea, you'll see that it breaks into the following. The first three verses, and you don't have your Chumash, so you have to take my word for it, is the words of the Navi, the prophet. You hear his voice. Then you hear the voice of Adonai. That's verses 4 to 8. The Haftorah ends, as they always do, on a very positive note. No matter what is said in a Haftorah, it always ends in a positive mode. And this one does the same thing in verse 9. And I won't go into that, just take my word for it. That's the way it works, all right? So voice mapping is very important. What's the significance of this? Well, in the class, what I do is I have a slide with the voices, and I assign one voice to somebody, and I always say, Rena, would you like to be God? Right? And somebody does the voice of God. And sometimes if we really want to get dramatic, we use a little bit of humming in the background to create the background. Now, this is called oral performance, right? It's a very old technique. It not only is part of our tradition, it's a part of much of the literary tradition of the world. I shouldn't say literary because originally this stuff wasn't written down. It was all oral. It was what we call oral. You heard it, you said it, you heard it. Only later did it get written down. So what we can assume is that when these prophecies were given, whoever gave them probably used different voices. He may even have brought some buskers with him to act it out so people would get the message. So what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say here that one of the ways to read this is like a little play, and look for the tone of voice, the emotion on and on like this. And in our class, we develop that in all kinds of interesting ways. Now, if you're lazy and you don't want to do it yourself, I'll tell you how to cheat. Go home, get AI, and tell AI to map the first chapter, say, of the book of Joel. And in about 30 seconds, it lays it all out in colors, right? God, the prophet, it's there, beautifully done, if you don't want to do it yourself. But it works out beautifully. So I'm suggesting to you yet another way of reading the Haftorah. I guess if I had my way, don't get me wrong, I'm not laying a trip on you, I would do both on a Shabbat morning, right? I would do the traditional chanting and the drama of it all. I think people would really enjoy that. In fact, in the Christian tradition, I point out, they actually have done that for hundreds of years. So that's the how of the Haftorah. Why this week's Haftorah? And here I guess you're wondering what's it all about. If you read the piece that Rabbi Mas read, plus the others that tradition suggests, it's really very interesting. Many of the Haftarot usually have God scolding the people of Israel, right? You did this, you didn't do this, you got to do this, right? God is socking it to them. At the end, after God scolds them, then the closing line talks about how ultimately things will be good, right? Ends on a positive note. All the sections of Shabbat Shuvah, there's no scolding. It's a very interesting image of God. You would think that, as happens in our tradition and in many traditions, if you want people to repent, tell them how damn bad they are, right? Get them to look at the schmutz that they've created in the world, okay? That's the way some religion, sometimes people do religion. That's called sinfulness, right? It has the overtone of how you kind of messed up and how messed up you are. But this Haftorah, it doesn't do that. It's a very different God who's presented here. It's a God who invites us, who encourages us, who lures us to discover the undiscoverable parts of ourselves. All right. It's a God who says, kind of going, come on, there's so much more of you that could go from potential to actuality. So it's a God who beckons, who calls, a God who is deeply concerned that you and I to the extent that we can, create or exercise, reach our potential. All right? As I said, it's a very different kind of God. Those of you who are interested in philosophy, there's a school of philosophy called process theology or process philosophy. And in there, they talk about this kind of a God who comes and offers us what? Life, the enhancement of life. And that's the God that is presented in the Haftarah. Is this by chance? No. All right? Because none of these Haftarot are by chance. Somebody, one of our ancestors, or somebody way back when, wanted to bring a message to us. They wanted to say to us, maybe the greatest sin that you commit is you forget that you are a spark of God. Wake up to the fact that you, all of us, are a spark of God. And we often forget that. And the God of this Haftorah calls upon us to remember that you and I are sparks of God. Shabbat Shalom.